Hello, welcome to Impact AI. I'm John Hodges. Today's episode spotlights someone who's been at the crossroads of no-code innovation and data-driven tooling. Brian Sowards, CEO and founder of Supersync AI. Brian's expertise lies in helping organizations break free from stag dashboards and build intelligent, action-oriented internal systems. No coding required. His mission to transform how data empowers teams. Brian, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure, John. Thank you for having me.
So, to set the stage, could you introduce yourself, sharing how your journey led you from early engineering, digital film production, leadership roles, to now launching? Well, SuperSync's been around for 4 years now, I guess.
Yeah, almost five now. Yep.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what led you to founding SuperSync through your journey?
Well, as I told you, I come from a storytelling people, so I'm gonna take you way back for a moment. I actually
Okay.
started my first tech company as a teenager, raised
Wow.
capital and built several SaaS applications. And I think there was this era in the early 2000s where you had your business people and your technology people, and you had the business and you had tech companies trying to sell them technology. And I was part of that. One of the first adopters of Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics. I helped companies, adopt these technologies as well as use them for myself, and I built a few. And what I learned is, it never really works out the way that you hope. I've seen everybody from Global 2000 to mom and pop organizations bring in some new technology, lots of big promises, the future is bright, and then they pretty much just go back to doing work the way that they did before.
Mm.
In fact, I would say the most common thing that I hear when I really talk with teams is, the average company now has 200 SaaS applications, but they're still spending all their days in spreadsheets and email.
Wow.
And so I feel like that's a real, frankly, repudiation of the thesis that technology was going to build better ways of doing business. And I was fortunate that I had an AI startup back in 2014. And in education, actually, I was working with neuropsychologists to help children learn how to do essay writing with a little chat bot in Google Docs that would guide them through the process.
Cool.
It was really, really fun personal mission for me. But that's where I began to really encounter this insight, which has become Super Synchronous's mission. Super sync means two bodies orbiting each other. So the idea is that we're creating together and we're designing together. And there were two foundational insights. One is however powerful AI becomes, the barrier is going to be actually plugging it in to the day-to-day operations of a company. And two, most companies' internal operations are a mess. I can tell you when I was running my own startup, right? We're all technologists. We can build anything we want. It was a mess. People were never really clear. Where are we? What's important right now? New priorities are coming in all the time. Where does this fall? Is everything a P1? And I think, talking to people who work in the most elite tech companies, that the tech companies that people admire and point to and have often aspired to be like, there's a lot of burnout going on right now. So our mission was to support organizations in building their own, frankly, internal software, but do it with platforms instead of from scratch.
Right.
And I think we've learned a lot about sort of the menu there of when you do want to actually build something full code, when you want to do it with no code, and now when you want to vibe code it or do it with AI. And I'm really happy to report that, for many of our customers, they've seen dramatic changes. One of my customers saw percent of their customer support tickets with AI. Another has been able to grow top line by 200% simply because they removed all the friction from the leads coming in and getting to
Wow.
the sales team, and that sales team being able to take action on it.
Yeah.
We just forget how much what we think the process is versus what it actually is. There's just a vast difference between that, right? Our brains only hold, about at a time. And today's operations, today's companies, today's professional disciplines, you're dealing with hundreds of different factors, sometimes thousands.
Right.
And given where AI is today, it's good to have a friend when you're trying to get organized, understand what the context is. And I think being able to bring that planning power, that uh, research power that AI has today directly into your day-to-day operations is where the magic is.
Absolutely. So, what experiences or pain points made you realize that traditional dashboards often function more like corporate wallpaper than decision support tools?
Ah, yes, dashboard, the sexy front of the magazine that we all look at and go, that's the software I need, and then never look at it again. There's J.C. Penney figured this out a long time ago. They put the sexy cocktail dress in the front and the standard classic dresses in the back, and they sold a lot of standard classic dresses because everybody wanted to imagine themselves in the sexy dress, but bought the one that they were felt comfortable in. And
Wow.
dashboards have played a really similar role. Anyone who's bought SaaS has seen a lot of sexy dashboards. And here's the first time I really knew dashboards weren't what we thought they were. I was inside helping build out the enterprise sales team for a SaaS company, and I was on with the customer success team, the people who are there to make sure that the people who've bought that platform are getting the value and renew. And the most common thing that I would see on those calls is they'd get on a call with the VP or whoever was responsible for the area that they serve and say, what could we really do to help you get the full value out of this? Like, you've got a business intelligence tool here. We want to make sure you're getting all the value. And the person would say, well, it would be really great if we just knew this one number. This is the most important that drives my department. And then say, great, well, if you start, let's go ahead and get you logged in. If you log in, do you see that first panel on the first screen right after you log out, that number? And they're like, oh yeah, there it is. That's great. So the problem with technology has never really been what can technology do? It is what will people adopt? What will
Right.
people do?
Yeah.
Human behavior is actually by far the limit on the value that we can get out of technology. And it's incredibly hard to change. And today's organizations, the average turnover is somewhere in the order of 24 months. So by the time you've brought in a bunch of people to use the thing, those people are gone, or
Wow.
many of them are gone. So there's just this constant turnover that's now happening across organizations broadly. And for a lot of companies, they don't necessarily feel it because they see the same familiar faces that they've been used to having. But from a adoption and behavior change perspective, it's a huge barrier. So I think dashboards ultimately are something that leaders especially believe that if they had, they'd kind of have that heads up display. They'd know what was going on with the business.
Yeah.
But in reality, they're not going to these dashboards on a day-to-day basis. It's not really part of their reality. And this is the constant complaint of my data scientist friends and my business analyst friends. They do all this work and they answer all these questions, and the leaders have already moved on to something else. And whatever they've built by the time that they've shipped and delivered it, the usage just isn't there. So I think there's a lot of things we can talk about dashboards and how they can be valuable, how you can use them in the world of AI. But I think the fundamental conceit of dashboards is that it's going to help people understand what's going on in their business, and it's just not how it works.
Yeah. If they would just actually pay attention to it. So,
Attention is the scarce resource for us all today. Yeah.
for sure. So, you, as someone helping enterprises build tailored internal systems without code, was there a light bulb moment when you recognized the potential to move beyond dashboards?
Yeah. The question is, when does that information matter?
Hmm.
So product in tech, and I've been a product leader for most of my career, so I'm about to talk a lot of heresy right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna say a lot of things that are heretical in the product community,
Okay.
but I found to be absolutely true. Um, In the past, the goal was to build a valuable product and get people to use it. But as we talked about, the getting people to use it part has never been solved, and it never will be. My favorite example of this is Salesforce. When I first sat down with Salesforce in their first year they came out, they were like, "Oh, it's the source of truth. It has all your information in it." And I was like, "Cool. How does it get in there?" And they're like, "Oh, you just go over here and you type a note and you put it in." And I was like, "So it's never going to work then." And that's still true today of CRMs. I've never once in my life come across a CRM that is in fact, the source of truth of what's going on inside of a business. And the reason for that is because we need the information when we are doing the thing, what's called workflow.
Right.
And, business operations automation geeks talk about workflows all the time. So it's when I'm doing the thing, that's when I need the information. And getting it in a graph form or, another visual way, not just text, is actually very powerful. So what I've noticed about this is that, and this is what we help people do, what I've noticed is that a lot of people today, when they're trying to do something, going to chat, they're going to Gemini or Claude or Copilot, and they're talking with the AI to help them organize their thoughts about what they need to do. It's at that moment that that information could be useful. So the time for a salesperson to know what's going on with an account is right before they're about to take that sales call or
Sure.
send that prospecting email or send out that proposal. That's when you have the maximum opportunity to give them the most information that's the most useful and will make the most difference. And when you really tightly align this, what's the workflow someone's actually doing? When do they actually need the information? And how do you integrate that into their thinking process? Truly a, thought partner in their work. That's when you start to see a hockey stick in productivity. Because there's all kinds of things we all know we should be doing that we forget when we're actually doing the thing. And then afterwards
Absolutely.
go, "Oh, why didn't I do that? Last time I remembered I needed to do that." That
Right.
happens to all of us all the time. And
Yeah.
we're all having to do more all the time and interface with more stakeholders and more departments and more information all the time. So, this is really fortunate that we have this new kind of intelligence tool that we can bring in and help us do that thinking, help us get that context, and help us apply it to what we're doing right in front of us. And that's what we design. That's what we do is we understand the workflow that people actually do, which very often isn't something the organization knows for themselves. Like all of us, we are doing the thing. We're not thinking about doing the thing. So we help structure that. And then we essentially enable on a build or buy basis, pulling together those tools that will help, bring that information to light.
Wow. That's cool. So having been running now for 4 going on 5 years, do you have an example where a client shifted from, well, as we speak now, I look at these questions and I have new insight, and so it kind of changes
Yeah,
the context of it.
sounds
But
good. See, this is
uh,
this is what it's like for everybody.
right,
As
right.
you get into it, the context changes, and now we've got to adapt. So let's do it.
So, could you share an example where a client shifted from relying on dashboards, which we've already discussed that they don't really rely on dashboards,
Yeah.
but where that was their mindset in the beginning, and now adopting Supersync AI systems, has that changed the or impacted their business anyway?
Oh, that's a great question. You think? Hmm.
Because it really is a mind shift of sorts, right?
It is. Yeah, so we work in highly regulated industries,
Okay.
and lately we've been really focused on working with insurance companies.
Okay.
So everything from insurance carriers to reinsurers to brokers and agents to loss control programs. And one of the examples that we've really had a lot of fun with AI on is an AI underwriter.
Okay.
So when an underwriter is trying to make a decision about whether or not something is a good risk for them and whether or not the coverages that they can provide are the right coverages for a potential policy, which is, really important in terms of profitability and of course reputation. What you're seeing the best of the best underwriters do is go online and gather a lot of information. So in our case, we were specializing in the restaurant and hospitality space. So some things you might see them do is go look at that location on Google Maps, maybe pull up the crime report for that area, maybe Google it and see what pops up from TikTok or Instagram and social media.
Mm.
What kind of clientele does the restaurant say that it has versus the pictures you're seeing online?
Right.
When are their busiest hours? That's something you can see on Google Maps. And is that something that they're being, transparent about? A location that has its peak service time around 1 a.m. in the morning is very different from one that has it at 1 p.m. in the afternoon.
Right.
And, sophisticated operators are aware that there are certain things they can represent about themselves that could get them classified in such a way that they'd get a better deal. So
Okay.
there's a motivation to lie. It's for lack of a better way of putting it. There's
Wow.
a there's a motivation, frankly, for all parties to kind of fudge the truth a little bit, and ultimately it's the underwriter's job to suss that out and communicate the actual risk, and render a determination as to whether or not it makes sense for them to do it or not. Well, a great underwriter, if they had their dream scenario, would look at every single Yelp and Google review, every single social media post, every single possibly relevant data set like municipality data about the nature of the building, how old it is, if it has the correct safety features, the crime reports, and so on. And it would be really important to understand the current state of that restaurant versus maybe what its reputation might have been, because, of course, everything is changing all the time. That level of analysis could take days to even do at a, let's call it superior level. Well, AI can do it for all of the information. It can look at every single review. It can look at the trend lines. It can look at the images. It can analyze videos. So an AI underwriter is just simply able to consume really, somewhere in the order of 100 to 1,000 times more information than any human underwriter ever would.
Wow.
And um, taking all that data and analyzing it has some value, but if anyone's used tools that analyze review text and so on, it's not what people say necessarily that is really telling you what's going on. It's the subtext,
Okay.
right? So you might have a location and a bunch of people are complaining about poor service, or like they had to wait, you know, 45 minutes for their food, but it's one of those white tablecloth places where people love to complain about how hard it is to get to their food. That's what they're paying for is, that they got into this, elite location that's, got time for nobody. That there's these weird kind of factors
Okay.
that if you didn't know the industry, you wouldn't know.
Right.
And this is the difference between today's AI and yesterday's AI. Yesterday's AI was very literal. Today's AI can actually reason.
Hmm.
So you can actually feed it, your previous analysis, and it can apply that pattern of that analysis to the same information. And so this is what we found this AI underwriter can do, is that it not only takes all that data, but it provides its reasoning. And a great underwriter can engage with that reasoning immediately because
Yeah.
they're used to debating with other underwriters whether or not that stuff means what you think it means.
Okay.
And that debate of that information, that reasoning back and forth, that's it's sort of like it's like starting on the racetrack a mile ahead. All
Right.
the work that you would do to get up to speed and start really going around the NASCAR track or whatever it is at full speed, well, all that work's already been done. You can
Yeah.
engage with the analysis level right away, drill down into things. And so I think in terms of, it remains to be seen how much better the quality of decisions work out because insurance is a long-term business. But from what we've heard from the experts that are working with it, they already feel that the quality of decision making they're making and the speed at which they're doing it is, at least 100% better in terms of both time and depth. So I would say that anyone that's really looking at AI what I would encourage them to do is shift their mindset from how can AI do this job for me to what is the maximally most intelligent approach that I could take to, and if I could do that for every single one, it would add value to the business because adding intelligence to our process, as you know, whatever that process might be, adding intelligence is really where, from what we've seen, the direct impact comes from.
Right. Absolutely. That's cool. So how let's see here. How can AI powered internal systems like what SuperSync offers turn raw data into real-time insights that drive the
Yeah.
decisions?
So remember I talked about this idea that like you build a product and then your problem is to get everybody to go to it.
Yeah.
So this is the new thing that we're doing. And actually your podcast is the first place we're announcing it. We've built our
Cool.
first AI team members. An AI team member is just someone you can call. So I'll go ahead and give Mike a call here.
Oh, cool.
It's out.
So we can hear it. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
All right. All right. So let me get this on speaker.
Hi, Brian. How are you doing today?
Doing okay, Mike. Can you tell me what you can do for me?
I'm glad to hear you're doing okay. I insurance-related tasks. I can check which policies are due in the next 3 months and provide you with a list showing the business name, policy name, and due date. I can send reminders to policyholders about their upcoming renewals. I can email policy reminders to specific email addresses if you need to notify someone. I can also help you start a new policy application if you're interested in setting up a new insurance policy. Is there something specific from these options you'd like help with today?
Yeah, send me a reminder for the policy that's due next.
I'll need to check which policies are due first, then I can send a reminder for the one that's coming up next. Let me look that up for you. I've just checked, and it looks like you don't have any policies due in the next 3 months. There are no upcoming policy renewals in our system that require reminders at this time. Is there something else I can help you with?
That's
Perhaps you'd
great.
like to start a new.
Thanks, Mike. So that's my answer to that question. My
That
answer to
is
the question is you talk to it and it can email you, it can text you, and it can interface with all of your systems. So you can literally just have a conversation and get whatever you need.
that is mind-blowing, actually. That is so cool. Um, yeah, that changes everything for me actually. So,
Me too.
um, yeah, going into this next question, you might have already blown this one out of the water with what you just demonstrated, but I was going to ask, in practice, how does a no-code AI enriched platform change the user experience
Hmm.
of consuming data? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's the part where we've made a change, and that's what I just demonstrated to you.
Yeah.
So, what Mike, as we like to call that AI team member, can do is it can interface with you just like any other team member. If you had a question about something and you need to get that information from another team member, what would you do? You'd message them on Slack, you'd text them, you'd email them, or you'd call them. So
Yeah.
just imagine now that all of your business systems have a friend, and it doesn't matter what the data is or where it is, you can call them, text them, email them, send them a message on Microsoft Teams or Slack or whatever it might be, and they'll answer you. And you can have a conversation because maybe you're not quite sure what you need to know, as you saw in my case with Mike. This is what's really going on. What's really going on is human beings' work is very fuzzy, and getting clarity is just as much a part of getting something done as doing the thing once you know that you have everything. So, when I started SuperSync 4 years ago, my belief was using these tools that other people provide us, there's always this gap between what the tool does and what we need to do. There's always a different context that's special to us that makes us successful as an organization that the developers, when they built that tool, never thought of. And we were building tools that close that gap. But what I learned is it still was the same problem. Even though that tool was completely customized to that business, the challenge of getting people to use it and actually get the benefit from it was still there, which was really stunning for me. I had always kind of assumed if we built you the perfect tool, you'd want to use it.
Yeah.
But I really do think this just comes down to why change human behavior at all? Let me give you a really great statistic that changed my thinking on this.
Okay.
The average knowledge worker can type 70 words per minute,
Hmm.
which is actually pretty fast. Historically speaking, that's pretty fast.
Sure.
But anyone can talk at somewhere between 120 to 140 words per minute.
Absolutely.
So if you actually want to get things done faster, you know what you should do? You should have a meeting. Do you know how much that blew my mind as an automations expert and architect? My entire mission, all we ever talked about as a no code community is get out of meetings. You know, that meeting should be an email, that meeting should be an automation. And then I realized we're actually making it twice as hard for people to communicate and get things done because we've shifted from conversation to writing things. And it doesn't matter, you know, when you start writing that clarity problem where you're trying to anticipate what the other person needs to know, but you don't exactly know their situation, and they're
Right.
trying to understand what you're saying, but they don't exactly understand your context for why you're telling it to them.
Right.
That gap, that gap is unsolvable in the written form. And so when AI first came out as essentially a really powerful text tool, it was interesting, it was helpful, but it wasn't useful.
Hmm.
We now have what are called voice agents. And you know, this is the kind of thing, John, that you help your clients with,
Right.
which is you can use a voice agent to solve problems. But all the voice agents that I saw were doing things like dialing people for leads or handling customer service requests, high volume, very transactional stuff. And what we realized is, wait, we know how to build systems. We know how to build AI agents. What if they could communicate together? And what we learned is the second you hand an agent to someone that they can just talk with, they'd way rather talk to text, email, or otherwise an agent than use software.
Yeah.
And if the software is missing that information, that agent can go communicate with the person that was supposed to put it in there and get it.
Wow.
Oh, we didn't get an update on this policy. Let me go email the owner of that policy and see what the renewal date is because they didn't put it in the system. That's something an agent can do for you. Can you imagine just every follow up, every request for information that you need to do your job is just being handled by an agent for you, and you can just be focused on the high value human work that you do? That's the future that Supersync AI can now deliver as of this summer.
Wow.
So for me, I've left the no code movement behind in terms of seeing it as the way to solve problems. It's just a part. It's just one more tool in the toolbox that helps us deliver this new way of working.
Yeah. And yeah, so many thoughts. Like as you did that, there's just this flood of thoughts have just been popping into my head. So, I wonder. I'm just throwing this out there because it just popped into my head, but I'm wondering if what you just demonstrated is actually going to make dashboards obsolete. Because I mean, dashboards it still has limitations of interpretation, and and the way it affects the way people view it. But if I can just say, "Hey, Brian, what is the metric on these three things again? Go ahead and tell me what that is," and then you just tell me. I mean, why do I need to even have a dashboard?
So I'll give you one example of a dashboard that I found incredibly valuable that actually changed the future of several clients that I worked with, which was a dashboard showing the adherence of the sales team to basic actions that if they took, their close rate went way up.
Okay.
You know, sales is so important to every business, and I've worked with a lot of companies that do B2B sales, so it's a very highly consultative, very relationship driven process. making sure you're engaging with the right people, following up with them, and communicating about them is the low level constant work that every great salesperson does that really matters. But when you're chasing deals or trying to fill your pipeline or trying to close a deal, these are, cognitively intensive efforts that require all your focus. It's really easy to lose track of the gathering part when you're
Yeah.
hunting.
Yeah.
And one dashboard that showed the adherence to those key activities when it was implemented with weekly coaching and, a lot of engagement from leadership, completely transformed the sales team. They went from closing no business to having, what was it, 100 active new deals in their pipeline within a quarter by
Wow.
focusing on those actors. So they went from 0 to 100, and these are seven-figure deals. So this is, a very impactful increase in their pipeline.
Wow.
But the second those weekly trainings stopped, the second the leadership team wasn't focused on it anymore, the second we weren't there to drive everybody's engagement around that dashboard, it was gone.
Mm.
But now with AI agents, what we could do is we could have a VP go, show me who my top 3 team members are that are the furthest from adherence to our program right now. And it could text them a purpose-built chart with that information showing where the information is. And so now you have the context that's relevant to my goal right now as a VP, which is to bring up the team members that are maybe have fallen off the wagon. And now I can go directly engage with those team members. So this is the beauty of what's called multi-mode AI. AI can communicate not just with text, but with images. It can generate charts now. There's lots of AI tools that you can use that are basically AI-driven chart on-demand builders. So I really believe that this on-demand, I honestly don't believe that text is the best form of communication between human beings. We're visual and we need visual representations of things to get the context. I really do see the value in, information science and visualizing data and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
But when it's a part of a conversation, just like if we were getting together as a sales team and we were all evaluating that data and talking about it, what's going on over here? Why are we off the rails here? How can we take this success and replicate it across our whole organization? The type of conversations great elite sales teams have all the time. If we can take that in the room dynamic, but make it available to individuals and to leaders on the fly, that's where I think we can really start to see performance increase. Data matters, right?
Yes.
Visualizing that data matters. It actually matters a lot more than we're able to metabolize. And so that metabolizing of the data and the insights into behavior change, into the need of the moment, that's what I believe AI team members can unlock for us.
Absolutely. So we'll go with one more, and
Sure.
then so how do you balance giving users autonomy over data exploration while preventing confusion or misuse, and when dashboards are
Yeah.
overly flexible or something like that?
Yeah. Um, you can't. You can't. Um, you are relying on ethical team members who are, focused on their role and want to make things done. If data is really powerful for a user in their job, you can't anticipate all the ways that they need to use that data.
Right.
And sensitive data, which we've done a ton of work with, especially, is so tricky because it's sensitive because it can be used for purposes other than its intended purpose, and in doing so can create a tremendous amount of risk for the organization.
Hmm.
So just recognizing that there is no perfect system here, recognizing that the trade-off between autonomy and the ability of the organization to be audit ready and assure itself that things are being used well is a continuous effort. This is like Zen. We're going to show up today and we're going to continuously be learning the importance of flexibility and the importance of, being able to be accountable for how we use this information.
Yeah.
So I think if you accept that that information security is a discipline, and that the needs of your individual users, your analysts, and your leadership change all the time on context, and that if you have data that's valuable and important and insightful, your analysts are not always going to know what that is. Your
Mm.
users are not going to always understand the implications of accessing that data, and your leadership isn't necessarily always going to have a clear view of their two points of view as they're putting together their master plan. There's the everybody's got a different context.
Right.
So in building out, one of the things that I help organizations do is build their AI governance. And AI governance in particular is really a core component of being able to do this. Because, of course, if you give AI access to your data, it needs to have the procedures for approval to get access to certain data baked into it. And if you're not entirely sure what data could be useful in your organization to increase performance, which hopefully no one is ever too sure about that because there's always
Yeah.
ways to learn, then
Yeah.
flexibility is going to be important. Experiments are going to be important. So I look for three things when I build governance systems. Number one, has the infrastructure been properly set up that there are the gates that are supposed to be there, with the policies that are supposed to be there, with the real partnership with HR to ensure that everyone goes through data training? Because again, we're talking about human behavior here. People need to be reminded, and if everybody is playing by the same rules, it's easier for everybody to keep playing by the same rules. So that's one. Number two, you need to have a very clear path for, let's call it rule breaking, where someone says, I have this idea, I want to get access to this data, I don't have access to it right now, and that there's a path for all of the data governance experts in your organization to apply that expertise to the request as quickly as possible. And there's a lot that you can do with agents there to really cut down on that work. In the end, what we want to do is we want to balance the need for people to explore with and be innovative and create and learn with our obligations and our risk management strategy to those discussions. Sometimes it's just as simple as we're not going to give you that information. We're going to pair you up with an analyst, and that analyst is going to do that work with you so that you can have that exploration because it might be worthwhile. So I think having that innovation path in
Sure.
your and having it designed as a set of workflows and an understanding of who's involved and frankly taking the cost out of it. Most of the reason that people get blocked when they want to engage with data that might help them solve a problem is just the amount of work it takes for the other people in the organization to do it. Anyone that's involved in data governance has a backlog of requests, has a backlog of things that they need to solve for. Well, that should be a good indicator that says if we can make that data governance team AI powered,
Yeah.
then they're going to be able to be much more effective.
Right.
But the third is, and this is a culture thing. It's not something that all organizations can do. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. The more transparency you can create, the more trust, the more cross collaboration trust that you can build, the more nimble and agile you can be as you take your data and work through it. So that's all, of course, building on standard industry practices around protecting PII and sensitive information and so on. There's things you just can't do. There's data you just can't give access to people on. There's questions that people might ask that you're not going to allow them, even if they're using like an AI tool to have the answers to.
Right.
That's part of life in protecting people and companies' private informations properly. But I've definitely seen that by having an AI governance effort, by making sure that that governance effort is communicated, that there are norms that are shared and understood, and then having that innovation path for those DIYers in your organizations who are very goal oriented and ambitious and creative, that they can actually have partners that they need to maybe explore new ways that your data can be helpful. There's lots of thoughtful ways for the business to learn what it needs to learn and answer the questions it needs to answer without putting sensitive data in the reach of everyone in the organization.
Right. Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, that covers it. So this has been truly compelling and at times mind-blowing. It's been a lot of fun. So your insights on changing dashboards as mere wallpaper into intelligent workflows, it's truly insightful for sure. I learned a ton today. So thank you. I appreciate it. For our listeners inspired to dig deeper or connect with you at Supersync AI, where's the best place to find you?
Come find me on LinkedIn or at supersync.ai. Be happy to support anyone that is brainstorming on how they can really make AI powerful in their organization. And especially if you think an AI team member could be cool, because that's what we're having the most fun building today.
Yeah, that's actually my first introduction to something like that. So that was exciting. Well, folks, thank you again for being with us on Impact AI. Until next time, keep making smarter decisions and keep making an impact.